Hi everyone. I hope this video finds everyone well. I do want to sincerely apologize again for not being able to get together with everyone last night. I really did enjoy our hangout from the night before, and we did get some good information flow going between the folks that were there. I thought that it was enjoyable. Hopefully, everyone else did as well. So, what I did want to do is kind of share some of that information and talk a little bit about the case study for those that weren't able to make that first hangout, and just give a little bit of the info that I had given at that one as well to those that couldn't make it. So I'm just going to talk briefly about the case study, and hopefully I can keep it under an hour since that's how long we talked about the last one at the hangout. But I'll try and keep it brief. So we had our emergency care group case study that we had looked at. Steve Morgan, who was tasked with trying to come up with some ways to bring additional revenue into the emergency care group. And I apologize, I have papers all over my table here, so I'll be turning to those as I'm talking here. But so Steve was tasked with trying to come up with some additional ways to increase revenue in their emergency care group, and they actually had a significant jump in revenue, or not in revenue, but a significant jump in their kind of their caseload. They did increase the number of clients they had. However, they didn't actually notice a an increase in profit, interestingly enough, for some reason. But they did notice an increase in clients. They had brought on a large number of new clients. But with this company growth, they decided that they really could provide some more additional services to more clients. They serve This particular group serves rural emergency departments, and they really want to provide services to more of those folks. And it really seems, in digging into this case and learning more about them, they really kind of serve a niche market. They serve rural emergency departments, and they provide a truly value added service by really being personalized to them, providing personal visits. The CEO actually comes in to visit. They serve on committees at the hospital. They just really provide a nice one-on-one service as opposed to a very corporate type service that is more reminiscent of these types of situations elsewhere. So what they found when they did some of their analyses is that many of their competitors offer coding, billing, documentation services, and even back at this time, uh, the the documentation and compliance, and actually back at this time is when I was in compliance full time. Documentation and compliance for physicians, and this, keep in mind, this is the physician side of the house. Documentation and physician compliance has always been an issue, and not that it hasn't for hospitals as well, but they were really pressing physicians at this time, and so they really were focused on trying to improve this for making a improvement in documentation. That's what many of their competitors were kind of selling that product, and they actually had developed a documentation product, but weren't selling it as a separate product. So they're tasked with trying to find ways to increase revenue, $50 million by, I believe, the end of 2008 is what they were looking at. And so we did have some questions as to how to address that. So just for a matter of brevity in our discussion here, I won't go over them in painstaking detail, but I did want to show some, kind of some documents that I have that break down some of that. So initially, we did want to do the industry analysis. So I do have, kind of an analysis of the industry, looking at, how they can grow. They're looking to grow outside of their own state. I think they're looking to grow into other nearby states. Wisconsin, I believe, was the first initial state they're looking to grow to, and kind of branch out into other states. And right now, the potential of growth is quite strong, because only 22% of that potential market is currently being served. So very good growth potential there. Um, the you know the thing that they bring to the table, and we'll talk to this a little bit more. It's a good and a bad for them. The thing that they really bring to the table, as I'd mentioned just a moment ago, is that they really do service their clients in a different way than many vendors, and that they truly do bring a personal touch. They go in, they serve on committees, they provide quality assurance, um, they are there to see their clients and to make sure the physicians are performing, and they just truly provide that personal touch, whereas many others do not do that. So they do really. It's if they continue to expand, they're really going to need to continue to do that. And with their current staffing mix, are they going to be able to? Because they have one salesperson, Steve. So are they going to continue to be able to do that? Kind of looking at the competition, and I do have another table here I'll show you in a second. They do have some large nationwide providers, some smaller regional providers. So there is some competition out there, but it's, in this case, the rivalry is not super high, because they all kind of serve different markets. The nationwide providers tend to serve larger markets. The the other smaller providers do serve more rural markets, but as they discussed in the case study, ECG has been quite successful at taking clients away from them. So it seems that ECG kind of has a leg up on their competitors in many cases. So it's, the rivalry is kind of low to moderate. It doesn't mean that it would continue in that way, and they do need to be aware of their competition, and stay aware of that. They can't assume that that would always continue. Um, we'll take a look at the competition here more in just a second. Just to take a look at the environmental factors quickly. From a technological standpoint, automation of documentation and billing is very important, and that comes into play in this case because of their ECG doc system that they've created, and are trying to make a determination. Do they want to sell that separately? Do they want to bundle that in as a value add for their supply or service, their supply of their ED docs? And then, just a number of other environmental factors, increased costs, overall, the increased liability costs that they are paying, which they don't specifically note, but the liability costs are increasing, could be bundled in with that high medical costs. So that's another factor here as well. And then always regulatory is always an issue with regard to anything in the healthcare space. So I just want to take a look at this competitor characteristics quickly. So when we were looking at this, we definitely wanted to look at all of the competitors, and we have all of the different competitors. The regional competitors first up here at the top: Emergency Practice Associates and Healthline Management. These are the two different regional folks. And then all of the national competitors: MCare, Team Health, FI America, and National Emergency Services. So what's interesting about them is that, generally all of these folks, if you look down the services offered, they do all offer some type of a value add, be it billing, education, coding, compliance, documentation, something other than just the staffing services. And at this point, outside of the value added service of perhaps quality assurance, um, there isn't a lot of value added service other than the fact that they are a great kind of a hometown type company. Uh, ECG isn't doing a lot of great value add type services. So that there is the potential there of doing some really great value add type services. So taking a look a little further at the questions, we wanted to do a SWOT analysis. So let's look at our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats with regard to this case. So, some of the strengths that they bring to the table, that ECG brings, obviously they focus on that underserved market. So, this underserved market of these rural small hospitals, if we look at our customer focus here in this case, you can see that none of them solely focus on that, and most of them are a mix. But these folks, ECG focuses solely on that. They do have that reputation of really being, personalized service, customized contracts, very to the point in working with their clients to make sure they have the best options. They are currently in Minnesota and Iowa, and that's they have good market penetration in those areas. So if they could continue to build in those areas, if there's other places there, maybe there's room for growth there. But they are strong in those areas, and so that works well for coordination of services regionally in those areas. And that works well also for coordinating physicians across those areas. So when you're working with contracted physicians, they may be working across various emergency departments. So if they're working at in one location, they may be moving to another in another location, 20 miles down the road, 30 miles down the road. If they're in a region, then that works out well for them. So that's just a few of the strengths. Moving to weaknesses that kind of partners with that. Some of the other areas that they were looking at expanding into: South Dakota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Missouri, Nebraska. They don't have good penetration into those areas, so that would make it difficult. If you have just a one-off hospital in one of those areas, it's hard to get physicians to cover there because you don't have dedicated staffing in those areas, nor do you have dedicated administrative staffing in those areas because your administrative staff is centralized in your location, your main location. So it's difficult to make all of that work efficiently. So that's kind of a weakness. And then also their limited sales and marketing staff, Steve, which is just one person. So those are some of their weaknesses. They have lots of opportunities. Obviously, there are opportunities in documentation reimbursement market. The increasing number of emergency department visits. This is something that is increasing over time, as we saw in the case study. So that's an area of increase. And the fact that there's a lot of the market that is open and available to them to try and pursue. So that's an area as well. And then threats, there are a large number, as we can see here on our document. There's a large number of the national players in this marketplace that typically work with the larger hospitals, but could pursue pursue their rural hospitals in their marketplace. So that's something that's a little scary and problematic. Um, Also, obviously, continued increased costs, different types of continued regulation could be problematic. So lots of things that are threatening to this overall case that could be scary and problematic. So the third question was with regard to strategic options. Lots of different strategic options available. Probably the one that I won't go over every option. Obviously, everyone has their own thoughts, and there's no right or wrong answer. The one that most folks choose and most students chose the other night was with regard to pursuing moving into other markets. So trying to pursue those additional marketplaces, but then also looking to pursue charging for the documentation service, their MDoc product separately. So that tended to be the favorite strategic option, but there's plenty others as well. But that tended to be the favorite strategic option to move forward and try to pursue sales plans on that option.